The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Welcome back to the Horror Academic, and it is still my month, not just of all the horror, but of all the nightmares. So to conclude, we're going to get back together with Mel of Brook Reading Podcast. Hi, Mel.
Hello.
And we're going to talk New Nightmare, because we can't forget this one, because I love this one. Oh my God, I love this one.
It's so good.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Loved it.
And this is, so I was thinking about this today. The reason why why I wanted to do it this way was because last year for All the Horror, we did Halloween and Halloween 2018, and they bookend in that way where you don't have to have seen any of the sequels or remakes. You can go straight from the first one to the 2018. And I think New Nightmare, to me, does the same. Does it feel kind of like that? Like, did you didn't feel like you missed anything by not seeing the stuff in the middle?
No, not at all. I agree. It felt like a nice ending. And I mean, I don't know how many more movies come after this one. I know there are a lot. But
there's 2 after this.
Okay.
Because it's Freddy versus Jason is next, but that's like you got to pick which series you want to call that.
Oh, come on. I can't even mess with that.
And then there's the remake, which, like I've said, I haven't watched. So one of these days I'll get around to. But
do you like not even count that one?
I don't really count that one.
But tonight's episode isn't about that movie.
Right. Let's not even talk about movies we don't like, because here's a movie we both really dug, and I have loved this movie since it was new, even though I didn't see it in the theater. New Nightmare came out in 94, which was surprising to me, because there's a line in the movie where they're like, so we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of, Freddy Krueger and A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I'm like, it was only 10 years between A Nightmare on Elm Street and this movie, and there was 5 movies in the middle. They covered some ground, dude.
But you said in our previous episode, right, that the original, the first one, like blew up New Line. Everybody involved just really started to want to pump these out. The second one did not, unfortunately, stick to the canon, and it was just kind of a moneymaker. So after that, probably generated so much popularity that it was just like movie,
Mm-hmm. So they were practically yearly. Yeah. And I know a lot of people don't feel the same way I do about part 2. So there's definitely, it had an audience, but the first one was so different, and just so strange and weird, and it had a mythos, and then he becomes a slasher in the second one, which he really kind of isn't in the first one. He's this crazy demon that can infect your brain. That's much scarier to me. But
yeah, well, that's actually what I liked about New Nightmare. No spoilers yet, obviously, but how it evolved. Definitely, it got like this hellish type of situation. I dig that. I feel like I'm probably a Satanist. Maybe I shouldn't say that out loud, but I really enjoy anything tied with like religious roots or stuff like that. I liked The Exorcist. I enjoyed that as a film. And it wasn't one of the movies that scared me a lot. There are other movies that definitely scare me more than The Exorcist, because I like the historical aspects of God and the devil and how they intertwine and shit like that.
That's why I love The Omen.
Exactly.
Kind of there's something about Jesus horror or God horror, whatever we want to call it.
Dude, thank you.
Catholic horror is and we both grew up from Catholic upbringings.
Yes.
So man, that stuff gets to something deep inside you, and you're like, oh, this is all wrong, but that's so cool.
I know. But what I did like about New Nightmare, and you asked me this, the Easter egg factor from the original Halloween to the one in 2018 was just perfect. Wet your whistle. It was just enough. It wasn't overload. And it was the same dealy with this. There were no as far as I know, there were no Easter eggs in this from 2, 3, 4, or 5. It was, and if there were, they were tiny.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's maybe 3, but that's because Heather Langenkamp's character only does 1, 3, and 7. So
Oh yeah, you're right.
there's moments I guess could have been callbacks to that too, but really it's not, because you have to remember Craven wrote the story for part 3, but he didn't write the screenplay. So
Okay.
or the screenplay that was used was not his, I should say.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things that he may not have had in his that ends up in what we see as the final movie.
Oh really?
So if this is like, he's thinking of it as, this is my way to kind of like go back to my original entry. I mean,
Like
there's
redemption.
yeah, but there's like a lot of cool things that I was paying attention a lot to, I guess, like the set dressings behind
Yes.
people
Same.
and how many cool things were Freddy memorabilia, and how it kind of was popping up, and just to kind of emphasize that point that Freddy is like everywhere now. And
Yeah.
like particularly when they're in Bob Shaye's office, there's this great kind of like Warhol style, multi-print of
Yeah.
Freddy, and all the different primary colors, and as stuff like that is in some way, I think, a little Easter eggish. It's like almost like it's like a drinking game, like count the Freddies.
Yeah, but I appreciated that. At least I feel like I only had to see the first one to appreciate all those things. Like they
Yeah.
weren't, it wasn't like too subtle or too like only for the cool fans. Like you can be a regular Joe and watch the first one and then go to New Nightmare and appreciate it.
Mhm.
So
Which I'm glad that worked out. Cool.
yeah, as a regular Joe, I appreciated that.
There were a few people, because I guess the biggest kind of Easter eggish environment is the when they go to the funeral, and that is kind of full of cast members, and that I believe there were people in there
I have to
from
ask you some stuff
sequels
about
too.
that, dude. Yeah.
All right, wait. Are we like all over the place? Do we want to start from the beginning? We're not good at starting from the beginning these days. I've noticed this.
No. I'm sorry, fans of the horror academic. When Brook Reading comes to visit the horror academic instead of her coming to the Brook, it gets a little weird. All right.
As I said, we're doing New Nightmare tonight to finish out the box set, because this is my preferred format these days for Nightmare on Elm Street movies. There's some great extras on here too, but you guys know that if I like it, that means there's some commentaries and featurettes and all the good things. Why I also kind of think of this as the end of the story is because that bookend effect of having Wes Craven originate it and then years later come back and finalize it and put a nice little bow on it and call it done. We know most of these people see last episode, because all of the people that I was talking about who are behind the scenes are in front of the camera now, and the people who are in front of the camera are kind of just cameos a lot of times. So, but that's another. This is like the quintessential postmodern horror film.
Yeah. But I like that. I like that a lot. I enjoyed how I never got to see what Wes Craven looked like before. I think I've seen Robert Englund once, but it's recent. So I didn't get to see what he looked like as a younger guy. I kept asking you, is that Bob Shaye? Is that so-and-so? And you were like, yeah, that's him.
Yep.
So that was really neat.
Unfortunately, Wes Craven's no longer with us, and it was just so nice when this movie started to be like, oh, that's Wes's voice.
Aww.
It was nice that there's kind of a record of him this way. So, and he's playing himself, and very believably playing himself. Like you can imagine, these are conversations he's having. So, I do love that kind of time capsule of everybody in almost like the height of their careers, like, looking young and healthy.
Yeah.
So
this movie definitely made me realize how important of a facet he is in the horror community, because and like, again, not really a spoiler because we're about to get into it, but like you don't really see him till the end, but like you said, he's setting up all the stones, but it's almost like where you see the most important character in a play and you don't see them until the end. Like he's that, and then like you said, just tiny little, it was very like sentimental. That's why I went to bed shortly after we were done. I wasn't scared at all, but I was just like, oh, that was touching.
Yeah.
It was really
it is. It's a bit of a warm blanket for fans of the whole thing.
I can 100% imagine that. Like, yeah.
Seeing Robert, seeing Heather so much, seeing John Saxon,
So excited.
I mean, I've been lucky enough to meet all of those people. And it was really nice to be able to say, oh my God, that was John Saxon before he got very old. There is only a few people that we've been talking about that were not playing themselves in this movie that we do want to quickly highlight. And that is, I think the first one is Miko Hughes.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the little boy who screams his way through this entire film.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he just like opens his mouth. It's like, so
Yeah.
much.
And it's not even like a little kid. Like when kids scream, granted, my heckles do go up because I'm not mean kids. No. But if they're in pain or they're like really in fear, a fear of something, I do have a little bit of a tendency to be like, oh my God, are you okay? His was just so friggin' annoying. I was like, shut up. I can't. But
yeah. Oof.
please.
It's rough.
Yeah.
But we can't not mention what other iconic movie horror fans will know him as an even younger self, right? Like he was even littler. Yeah, he was Gage in Pet Sematary.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're only going to make a couple of horror movies, some good ones.
Yeah, let's go with Stephen King and Wes Craven. That's a good idea.
Yes, these are the people that I think would be approvable on anybody's resume.
It's basically like the father of modern horror literature and the father of modern horror cinema. Like, and let's jam this kid into both of them, which is great.
And he's just, he's a screamer.
Funnily enough, though, didn't scream that much in Pet Sematary.
No, he did not. But he was creepy and dead for parts of Pet Sematary, so that kind of stops you from screaming.
I guess
most of the time.
That's true.
I should rewatch that. I haven't rewatched that in a long time.
Oh my God, I love that movie.
Another person I wanted to point out is the person who plays Heather Langenkamp's husband, Chase, is Jason Newsom, who, he's a TV actor. There wasn't really any horror. I mean, I think he was in a couple episodes of Supernatural, so I'll put that out there. But I mean, wasn't anything else that jumped out at me. But he has done a lot of stuff. But so he does look familiar for that. Who was the person that you wanted to highlight?
Okay, so yeah, he does look familiar from other stuff, but I can't tell what either. But the person that looked the most familiar to me, other than little Gage, was Julie, the babysitter. It was killing me. We were both talking when we looked her up. First of all, we realized she was like 7 or 8 years older than the two of us, which shocked us. But first and foremost, she was in 90210, and she was Laura. She was only in 6 episodes according to IMDb, but I feel like they were really memorable episodes, and I don't remember exactly why, but I watched the hell out of that show when I was like that appropriate age. And I feel like she was like sick. She had like cancer or something, and like Brandon was like taking care of her. I can't remember. There was a thing. Yeah. I'll find out and I'll let y'all know. But
that totally like when perfect. You said that, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, yeah.
Yeah, that snapped on the light switch for you. She which I don't remember and I'm upset by because I was obsessed with this show. She was in Days of Our Lives. She played Carrie Brady from, again, like 92, 93, that sweet spot where that was like all I was watching. She was in, season 1 of Angel in only 1 episode, but she was there. So that was kind of like horror-y. But the most horrific thing I think this girl has ever done, even though I've seen this movie like so many times, it was a TV movie. And it was called Dying to Belong, with a very young Hilary Swank.
Oh.
Where they were all college kids, and they weren't, I don't know if there was a sorority involved. There may have been. But you know who was also in it? Did you watch Blossom?
Yeah.
Okay. Her best friend, Mayim Bialik's best friend with the big forehead. She was in it, and she got killed, I think, for like hazing or some shit gone wrong kind of thing, and she got killed. Julie popped up and I was like, oh, I know you from something, and it ended up being,
thinking about it now, I do remember her in Lost, but I couldn't tell you where in it. But
yeah, so that's Julie.
Yeah. This film starts unusually because you were like texting me like, where were the opening credits? Were there credits yet? It's like a half hour in.
There was no, I remember like 25 minutes in, I was like, did we see credits and then I just miss it? And you were like, no. I was like, okay, so it's leading to some shit. So I just have to wait and be patient.
I like how they don't show them to you till the end of the movie. Like the title screen doesn't pop up till the very end of the movie.
Not at all.
But I think that's, that's a lot of things we're trying to do there. It's like, did the movie start yet kind of feel, or is this just a dream kind of thing? Like there's a lot of things they're playing with here of
Yeah, you can tie that into a lot of like possible ideas. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I like that. It's also 94 doing this kind of postmodernish kind of world of, no, these are real people. This isn't the movie yet kind of thing. Like I think that has a lot to do with it too. It's a pre-Scream world, so they're making their own path.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's part of it.
Yeah, which I actually said, if this is going to be in the same vein as like where Scream made like Stab, I love the Scream movies, don't get me wrong, but I like this one a lot better. And that particular iteration, whether it was, I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 still, but
I think that was 2.
Starts the same because it starts with the creepy and the making and everything, but now it's like high tech and cool and 90s and shit. So that was
it's got servos and molecular structures. Yes,
I know. It's not like 70s leather, anymore. It's like legit now.
And it's like, if this movie was made 10 years later, it would probably just be a big green screen and some CG. But
you'd see somebody just furiously typing on a computer instead of like actually making something. Yeah.
It's very believable that where we're starting is actually the start of the movie, that it is really happening. And then we get kind of the double whammy of it, right? It's like, so it's not just the start of a remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. It is the film set of the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah. The proposed remake. And then it's like, on top of that, it's just a dream. So it's like, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. This movie's like an onion.
Yes. Onion is the perfect way to describe this, because literally my notes start to look like an onion. Because I wrote, oh, cute, it's a movie. Oh, wait, is it a dream? Oh, wait, are those guys really getting killed? And I just started to I kind of started to fall apart like an onion. It was very frightening. And then I wrote, oh, is that Gage? Literally one of 3 lines down. I'm like, is that Gage? Also, the director who was talking to the special effects guys, was that Wes Craven? Because I can only see half his face.
Okay. Yes, that was Wes Craven. Cool. That's definitely Wes Craven. And he's talking to the effects crew. Okay. As far as I know, the effects people are all actors.
I thought so. I think their names were different when they did finally get the credit.
Yeah. So that's the only thing. They're representative of other effects artists, but it feels like it could have been a very normal set, the way everything was going and everything. So, but I love that it's like, you have that. It's a dream. Is this a movie being made? It's none of that. It's an earthquake. It's like,
yeah. And then not only that, is it a movie? Is it a remake? Are they doing a sequel? Is this going on? Because like you said, Wes is there. The hand is there. Heather's got to be popping up somewhere. And then I got a little confused too. And probably because I'm so not into it. I wasn't in the ethos yet. I was like, is she Nancy or is she Heather? Because they were calling her Heather. But I was like, well, if she's dreaming, maybe I got really confused around that.
No, I think they want you to be a little confused there, because I don't know how much it was just kind of known walking into this that you were going to see a movie about the people who are in the movies. So I think they want you to try and figure out, is this Nancy or who is this? And I think they want you to go through that experience. Yeah.
But I kind of like the way they did that, because once it was established, no, this is Heather. And she was this girl who did all these movies and she's blowing up, pop culture films. Then you look back and you go, well, wait, were all those movies, they were all just movies, or were they dreams, or were they fever dreams of hers? Or they fever dreams of Wes Craven? Or were they so there was in the first 5 minutes, there's a lot of shit to unpack. So it was roller coastery, which I like, I tell you, if a movie's slow in the beginning, I'm out. This one was not. I was seriously writing notes.
Actually, I noticed at the end that this was just under 2 hours, I think. Yeah. And it flew. There was so much story. Yeah. I was surprised when I put the DVD in for us to do our little viewing party. When it popped up, it's hour and 53 minutes. And I was like, really? I didn't think that was a long movie. And then there's just so much story to tell that you don't get enough of a breather to realize. Yeah. As opposed to, we were talking quite a bit how last time, how Nightmare on Elm Street, which is a shorter film, has this kind of one chunk in it that slows the pace down.
Yes.
And I was kind of wondering if that was going to happen again. And no, this movie still had a lot of flow to it.
Yeah, this one was, I know. And I feel like too, if this was made nowadays, because people get so jacked about making a movie that's 2 hours and 30 or plus that, just for the sheer excitement of doing a long movie.
This was exactly the length it should have been. It
Yeah.
did its job. Maybe I would have cut out a little bit at the end, mostly the 90s music. But
oh well, it has to tie back to the terrible 80s music from the first one. So that's, now you're cutting out an Easter.
oh, there you go.
So then she wakes up to an earthquake. Wanted to ask you about those earthquakes too, but I'll wait for a minute. The whole thing was a dream. However, her husband, who is in charge of the special effects of that movie, or he has his own company, like, which I believe you said in the last episode of Us that they did that in real life.
Yeah,
her husband owned a special effects company.
Her husband, he was a special effects artist at the head of his team. Yeah, it's kind of following her life. Yeah. So it all seems very possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So when they, start to wake up and get their bearings and everything, she starts to realize that he has cuts on his fingers where he got cut in her dream. And she's like, oh, exactly. So that's not that great for the two guys in her dream because they died.
Mm-hmm.
So if her husband is coming out of the dream with cuts and bruises and whatnot, who knows what's going to happen to our friends later.
So the other thing that we learn in that is, there's been a series of earthquakes going on in California. It keeps popping up on the news that there could be a new fault line that wasn't known before, because it's freaking everybody out how often these earthquakes are. And earthquakes become like a real pattern in the film.
As it got going more and more, I didn't know if that was if they did that on purpose or they were trying to add to the dream state or add to the panic state. Like, I wasn't really sure why they brought them in, or they were just like, hey, look, they're actors and they live in California and this is what they endure. Like, I wasn't really sure, but
I think it starts in that zone of, hey, this is part of life in California. If you live in LA, you're used to it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes more tied to, I'm not sure if it's Heather's emotional state or Dylan, her son's emotional state, but there's little quakes that pop up that nobody else is experiencing as the story goes on more often.
Right. Yeah.
So, I think if you think about it, by the end of the film, other people that she's talking to only acknowledge that first earthquake we saw in the beginning, but she has earthquakes every day in the story.
Yeah.
So I think it has a lot to do with their emotional states.
You're right. Like their heightened tension of everything they're going through, because she also said that, like, so before my actual movie notes resumed, I wrote, she's so pretty. Jesus Christ. Because she's really is beautiful. These phone calls that she's getting and she's thinking she has a stalker are starting to bother her again, which apparently were bothering her in years past. So I kind of tied the two together too. Like, okay, maybe the earthquakes are making her anxious and then these phone calls are making her anxious. And like you said, not really happening to anybody else.
Which is another thing that is true to her life at the time. She did have a stalker.
Oh man.
But here's the crazy part, was the stalker was from her television days of doing like sitcoms. Yeah. She had a stalker from that who was calling her. That's why she becomes eventually more a behind the scenes person as opposed to an in front of the camera person. And Wes actually, because they really were still very much in touch, kind of asked her if it would be okay to kind of explore that in the script.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's why the film is so much like real life. I
like that though. And I appreciate that she was so willing to be like, yeah, let's play with it and let's see how it, kind of works out artistically speaking. That's pretty cool.
I don't know how many people you would have trusted to do something like that. So
sure. But like you said, she trusted him and they had a good rapport still. So that's awesome. Mm-hmm. And then we meet her kid.
He screams a lot.
And I was like, didn't you die 5 years ago getting hit by a truck?
There's an interesting thing then also is that you see her little boy Dylan watching television, and it's obviously the first Nightmare on Elm Street on TV.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's just kind of like, I'm not supposed to watch this, but I'm watching this and I can't not look away. And she freaks out and he starts screaming and little quake. And that starts to happen where the movie is just playing on TV every now and then. And Dylan's kind of catching these glimpses of it.
Yeah, even though all the TVs are unplugged.
Yep.
Plugs don't matter in this universe.
It's for the first time you see her yank the plug out, and then every other time you see it, the plug is prominently placed in front of the
dangling.
TV.
Yeah, it's just hanging out. Like, we're not plugged in, so you should not be watching anything, but always something pops back up.
Yep.
The second time that happened, when she was in bed and the news lady kept popping up to say more and more about the earthquakes and shit, that reminded me of Batman 89 with the weird commercials for the deodorant and the makeup that the dealer was selling. It just she sounded kind of like it, and the visual of it was very and I was like, what movie am I watching? Hold on. It's very reminiscent, but it was cool.
It's the Joker spray.
Yeah, I was just like, these are the Joker makeup commercials. Like, what's going on? So mom and dad both work in Hollywood. They both have to leave. She's hesitant, obviously, to leave Dylan because she is getting weird phone calls. He's starting to be super tense. Creepy limo driver. Don't know if he was just creepy or if that was again adding to the tension, but
yeah, he was
French toast. He was terrible.
He was creepy enough, calling her, reminding her, I'm out here waiting, we're gonna be late, those are just kind of but then when she's in the car, it just gets weirder,
he's just obsessed with her movies. Oh my god, I loved you were in those movies, right, with Freddy Krueger, and she's just like, okay,
yeah, I love that. Just a little, I'm just gonna close that window.
Yeah, because I don't want to talk about this right now. Okay, so then I started to finally fit into the universe. I started to figure out where me as a viewer was fitting in. I'm like, okay, so all these movies are movies. Is this the first movie in horror that is treating it as a phenomenon and not? Obviously, we know it was pre-Scream / Stab.
Yeah.
They didn't do this with anything else, right?
I think this is the first time we see it like this. There's other movies that kind of will mention that there's there's horror movie. I want to say something like Fright Night is very aware that you live in a world where there are horror movies.
Yeah.
But Return of the Living Dead has done We Live in a Dead where Night of the Living Dead is a real movie, and this just happens to be a world where that really did happen at the same time. So there are movies that kind of acknowledge that there are movies. Yeah. But this is the first one where I think it's kind of no, wait, we were in the movie, and now here's us playing ourselves, not playing the characters we were in these movies.
Yeah, we're just living these life with these people that just might live on our block, or and this is their job, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I started to finally get settled into that place, and I was like, all right, now I can roll with this. I'm good now.
And I think that's where you're supposed to kind of get to that point of oh, I get it now, because she's being rushed to a set for an interview for a morning show, because apparently we're up to the 10th anniversary or almost the 10th anniversary of the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's become such iconic. And of course, the guy's asking her really awkward questions, like him asking, oh, you have a son, what's your son's name, would you let your son watch the movie? And she's just like, no, why are you asking me? This is strange.
That's way too personal about my kid. And she backs away, and she's like, don't tell me how to parent my child, almost, which that becomes a theme too, which pisses me off.
But that is a thing. Oh, think about it. In the 90s, that was a theme of from the 80s, late 80s, that became a thing where it's horror movies are ruining our children. You think about at the same time of all of this is over in England, you have the video nasties craze of the mid to late 80s, where movies that were considered inappropriate for children were then illegal. You could get put out of business. You could be put in jail for renting movies to kids, like The Evil Dead, because it wasn't it was a banned film, So, I mean, there is still this kind of crazy, this is the time period where we're still very much living in this world where horror movies are going to ruin kids' lives. And don't let your kids watch horror movies. And the famous trial was the kids, I want to say they were 13 or 14-year-old kids who killed another kid, and they blamed the movie Child's Play. It turns out in the end, the kids had only ever seen the trailer on TV.
Oh, geez.
They never even saw Child's Play. It was just a kind of a scapegoat.
Okay.
But this was a common theme, in the UK and in America of blaming. I mean, we blame D&D. We blame.
Oh yeah.
All the things that we blame.
This was Satanic Panic, right? Was the 80s, mid 80s.
Yep.
PG-13 was invented in the 80s, correct? To kind of try to fix all this stuff. And then they started doing it with music too, where they were putting the labels on shit, and Tipper Gore went crazy.
PMRC,
Yep. Yeah, so she's on that talk show, and this is where I wrote Hollywood Freddy, because the talk show is like, oh my god, well, okay, now that we've talked to you, we've got this huge surprise for you, and whoosh, rips through the curtain is Robert Englund, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, but dressed as Freddy.
Dressed as Freddy.
And,
but I wanted to ask you that every time it was Freddy in the movie, was it him?
He does play the incarnation of Freddy that we see in the film.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So he's doing double duty.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a lot of roles happening in this movie, which good for him.
I love you see the kind of range of him in this too, because it goes directly from the big, huge Freddy persona, because it's like the crowd is completely full of cosplaying, and everybody's Freddy'd out. Nobody is Nancy, by the way. They're all Freddy.
You know you're gonna get upset by that. No, you're right though.
That's like Heather Loncomp was the draw for the show, right? Like Freddy was the bonus. So
yeah, you're right.
Anyway,
and he I know, and he was like, I'm gonna get you in your dreams, baby. Like he's all like Hollywood. I'm like, oh, that's weird. I don't like it.
There's a great shot of Heather's point of view, because she's obviously still weirded out by a lot of this stuff. Like she doesn't, but you see the audience, you see the stage lights, and you see Robert Englund doing the kind of like this kind of motion, and he's saying the line, which I think is from part 2 of "You're all my children now," and it's perfect because this is what Freddy is to her. This isn't what Robert is to her. This is what Freddy is to her, and I love that.
That's cool. Yeah, when it got dark and you could only see the shadows of his blades and shit, and that, like, this was quality film. I know you're like so jacked to hear like everybody say it, but no, seriously. They thought of everything, those tiny little details. Like, that's why I took so many notes. I was like furiously writing the entire time. Yeah,
there were a couple times like, should I pause? You might miss something. I'm gonna pause.
I know. You're like, she's missing stuff.
Like, it's okay. That'll happen again. Okay, good. You know. But I love the juxtaposition right there of him being on as Freddy, and then right after it cuts to them being backstage and Heather grabbing some fruit from her bowl, from craft services, and he's signing autographs because there's hordes of kids, and she's just kind of like, I gotta go back to my kid. Ready to go yet, Robert? And then he's Robert again, you know. And I love that dynamic of remembering Robert Englund is not Freddy Krueger, you know, and Heather Loncomp is not Nancy. Yeah. But I love that little moment between them. And she's like, why didn't you just tell me? He's like, oh, it's a surprise, it's a nice little conversation.
Yeah. But see, now this is a perfect, if we could make this like a audio and then a screenshot, this is why you're the horror academic, because you just said that. And that was lovely. And I wrote at this same juncture in the movie, he's not bad looking out of all that makeup. Because I am not the film expert. I'm just like, okay, young Robert Englund, I see you, and I like what we're doing.
No, I love his the little purple tinted glasses too. Yeah. They're very sharp, and he looks like Mr. Suave actor dude. He doesn't look like Freddy.
I have a crush on you in the 90s. Like, I get it. I'm on the train. And then I started to write, oh, Bob Shea, you mentioned him. Is that actually him? Is that Wes Craven? Is this is that
so Heather gets kind of on this, now that we've got you, we've got this limo guy and we've have you for the day because you're doing press for us.
Yeah.
Come by over to the New Line offices and we're going to pitch something to you and you're going to want to do it, and come on. And so she doesn't really have a choice because they're paying for the car.
Yeah. So
she goes, she meets with Bob Shea, and like, I'm sitting there thinking, how many people in that scene in the office are just like there for work today, and how many are like, actual extras in the set dressing,
Oh, yeah, right. That's true. Yeah, but, like the girl that was a bitch to her. Like, do you have an appointment? It's like, do you know who I'm Nancy.
Okay, you're general casting. But the woman who was like the line producer or, casting agent who comes down and gives her a hug, you're real New Line. Got it.
Okay. Yeah. I love that. I kind of thought that too, actually. I was like, I wonder if she knows that lady that hugs her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's probably was her, her set mom from 10 years ago or whatever. That's so funny that you mentioned that. Oh my God. So then when she does finally end her work day, And she goes back home. We do find out that Dylan is starting to have similar dreams that she had too in the movies, and now in real life. And his dinosaur gets attacked. Little Rex.
Little Rex. Like Rex is a cool. I wanted a Rex when I saw this movie the first time.
Yeah, and I love his explanation of it and I don't remember if this is the exact scene or a little bit later, but you know, he's down at the foot of his bed, so like you see the raised like sheets, and mom is like, why, what's that lump down there? And he's like, that's Rex. He's like, he protects right by where my feet are, and he's like, and I make sure that my feet are behind, you know, in front of him, and he stops whatever's going to come up my bed sheets. And I'm like, yes, we all need a Rex. Like,
Yes.
even now, that's so good. Like, he really put a lot of thought into that. I liked that. I don't think that was that scene, but I may have just.
I think I'm trying to remember if the first time we see Rex is the time that he gets clawed the first
It's
time.
when he gets slashed, because I was
Yeah.
like, it was like right through the stuffing.
And it's like stuffing's coming out, and then it's just like, poor Rex. He was just doing his job.
I know, which he's very good at it. But she was trying to read him to sleep, and she was reading him Hansel and Gretel, but she kept stopping herself because she kept saying, it's too violent, I don't want to finish it. He's like, come on, Ma, tell me the good stuff, like, let's go. And I always appreciate, like we talked about in Halloween, like we talked about in, you know, 2 weeks ago, when they pick a literary reference, it needs to be on purpose. And with Nightmare, the first one, it wasn't really on purpose. They didn't do a great job. With Halloween last year, that shit was purposeful, because the teacher's discussion and the questions that they were talking about was very germane to the theme. The conversation is about what she's got going on in her head. And in Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, they missed that mark because they started talking about Julius Caesar, and I'm like, yeah, you missed it. This, I didn't figure it out right away. It took me a minute, but at the end, 100% chose the correct. And you could have chosen any fairy tale. They're all fucked up. Hans Christian Andersen and Grimm, they are Grimm for a reason. Like, they're all messed up. But this one was a good one, and we'll figure out why later. So
it is kind of this will be important in an hour or so, you know, kind of moment.
Absolutely. So then after she puts Dylan down to sleep, she goes to bed and has a dream that her husband, who was on his way home from a work thing,
a soap commercial,
was driving home, and he fell asleep at the wheel, and every time he was starting to fall asleep, we see Freddy popping out. Crotch shot again.
But
not as, like, you know how we took so much metaphor from the Nancy crotch shot because it's all like feminine and stuff, and we, you know, that's where we go. That's where we go. Him like tapping on his like jean crotchal area. I was like, I don't need this. I don't need it. Why?
I think there was part of it was, hey, we're gonna do a gender swap. You know, like,
okay,
I get that. I think the most horrific part of that scene isn't the Freddy Claw getting way too close to his genitals. It's him trying to sing "Losing My Religion" to keep awake.
I forgot about that, and I didn't write that down, so of course I forgot. Yes. Oh, that was fantastic.
Yes.
Right? It was 94, so that was.
Yep. And I don't know anyone that turns the radio off to stay awake.
Thank you. I was like, dude, you know you're doing this wrong, right? You're supposed to blast the radio and roll down the window so you get the cold air to stay. Like, I've driven tired before. I know how to fucking do it. Yeah, that was strange. He's like, I'll just sing myself awake. No, bro, that's not what you're doing, friend.
What I particularly like about the scene is that, I mean, the end of it, when you kind of go into like their home, I think Dylan wakes up screaming because he's Dylan, and Heather has the nightmare of something bad happening.
He's seeing it happening, kind of, I feel like. Yeah.
And then, but when the doorbell rings and she can see through the glass that it's two police officers, it does one of those Spielberg push zooms where it gets like the background gets further away and it zooms in on her, and you can tell it's this disorienting kind of hellish moment that she doesn't want to have to move forward and answer the door. And I really appreciated that. I think that's a smart way to show her anxiety.
Yeah,
it was already high because she was already saying, you need to come home, I got another phone call, Dylan's freaking out, something's going on. Right. Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, all right, I'll come home. And you have to wonder also if she's full of guilt.
Oh yeah,
because she made him drive home late.
Yeah.
and he said it was a 3-hour drive and he did it anyway. And, you know, like, so there's, is this my fault kind of moment there too, which is tough, you know.
Yep. Can you give our non-film friends an example of when like Spielberg did that? Was there like a big movie where that like...
Jaws, in Jaws, the moment when they open the beach, even though Brody says not to, and they're sitting on the beach and he's kind of like trying to look everywhere at the same time, and you hear the kids scream shark. It does it zooms in on him, but the background kind of goes away. Same shot in Poltergeist when the mom is trying to get to Carol Ann to push zoom. I mean, I think it happens in all of the Indiana Jones at some point. It's just that's Spielberg's thing. He does it really well. I love it. But
yeah, I remember it from Jaws. The second you said it, I was like, oh my God. And I remember it from Poltergeist. Yeah, that's awesome. That does really like make you go, oh, I'm the only one in this space and I'm the only one feeling this, even though there are other people around me and it might be daylight, but I'm all crunched in now and it makes you feel like claustrophobic. Dude, good.
Yeah, totally effective, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He may not have invented that, but he perfected it.
All right. Yeah. Well, that's
okay. I mean, somebody's gonna probably tell me, "Oh, that happens in The Shining, and that was blah blah blah," and I was like, "Yeah, whatever." Jaws, dude, Jaws. Go back to my Jaws episode.
There you go.
Yeah. I was gonna say also that anxiety level. I mean, I remember the next day's scene when you see her in bed again, and you know she's obviously only using one half of the bed, and I don't know, maybe it's because it's first or second time of watching this as a married person that you get a different feeling when you watch these scenes.
I know.
You know, she has to go to the morgue to identify the body. I mean, all of those moments, it's hard to not think of what that's like.
I know.
Hats off for making it emotional and not just a moment in a horror film.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I mean, you know, my mom has since moved and gotten a new bed since her husband died, and she still sleeps on her side.
Yeah.
He won't sleep on his side. And
my dad too.
Yeah, exactly.
Be that the combination of Wes Craven's writing and Heather Langenkamp's acting, I think they just do an excellent job of making you feel like, what would that feel like to be Heather right now?
These are so good at like keeping the human aspect going. Like the first one did it definitely. We mentioned that, how like, and this was a flaw that I will admit in Halloween. They gloss over the friendship. They didn't do that in the first one, and that's super important, especially if your final girl is mostly always going to be a teenager. You have to focus on the good parts of her life, her friendships and shit. You can't just gloss over that stuff. And then when you're an adult, and like you said, the second you get married, all that stuff is always in the back of your head all the time. Same. I like that. My next note was like, poor Heather, sad face. It was like, yeah, it's not all scary. And I like that. Like, I kind of feel like I'm also getting a glimpse into Wes Craven through Heather's character and through everybody else. So,
yeah. That's the thing. You have to have a solid writer to make a character that you care about.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why while I say I can enjoy some films, the ones I really love feel like the ones that have the writing level where they're 3-dimensional characters. They're real people.
Yep. 100%. This now I go from this like super heightened amazing review to a complaint. I'm like, they do not just let you walk around a morgue by your damn self.
Yeah, that you can't just open the door and there's 50 people working, you know.
There's a cop or somebody that escorts you. I don't know. I've never had to identify a body, but I'm assuming there's a cop or there's a mortician, somebody who escorts you down. And then that's weird. This bothered me too. The mortician looked familiar, or the guy who.
Yeah, I couldn't place him.
He looked familiar too, so that was bothering me. And then I wrote, oh, he has a funeral. Because I'm still angry that Tina.
You're still mad at Tina.
So he has this beautiful funeral with a really nice casket, but that gets weird. So
this is the scene where I was kind of like looking at you, like, how many people do you realize who all the people behind her are? You know, like, because that's
only a couple. It was hard, man. Yeah,
pretty much. Like that's
why
the cast is behind her.
Yeah,
like I know really prominently, like right behind her is John Saxon. Bob Shaye's right there, I believe. I know Robert Englund's right there. I think Wes Craven's there. Jesus Garcia is right there too. So that's Rod from the first one.
Is it really?
Yep. I think next to him, oh man, I want to say that was Tuesday Night, who's from part 4. That's why I'm saying there might be a couple people there that are from the sequels.
Okay.
So it's like you kind of get this idea that her Nightmare or New Line family comes out because he was also an effects artist, and you assume that he worked on movies that were New Line as well.
Yes.
There's a quake again, and you're not sure if everyone felt the quake, because to everybody else it looks like the casket just goes, but to Heather it's like, and she dives for the casket. And
well, because she turned around and realized the kid was gone again.
And yes, so the casket starts to fall because of the quake, and then next thing you know, Dylan's trying to get into the casket with Dad, and then of course she goes in and she goes trying to grab Dylan to bring him out, and Freddy's there all of a sudden. It's like, what's going on, and then of course in the end she banged her head, and John Saxon's lifting her up because the coffin's right where it was a minute ago.
Yeah.
So how much really happened and how much didn't?
Yeah. Wasn't it a little bit like her husband's body turned into Freddy? Because didn't he pop out at one point and be like,
I thought he was like zombified, and he was kind of like, like a come to me kind of thing.
I thought Freddy was in there with them, but then I thought her husband like clutched his hands onto her head and was like, stay with me or come with me. Yeah, so there's like 4 of them down there. There's a kid and her and her husband and Freddy, and they're all down there. I don't know how they fit.
It's a mess. Ask her, where's Daddy? Is Daddy coming home? Daddy's with God now.
This is also, he starts hearing the creepy kid song too.
Mm-hmm. So he comes to bed with her. Rex comes to bed with them. Rex is at the foot of the bed for both of them now, but she's drinking coffee in bed.
Of course she is.
Mm-hmm.
And the coffee pot's probably right next to her too.
The next morning she calls Robert to say that there's strange things happening, which is cool because he doesn't tell her what he knows.
True.
Just like in Nightmare on Elm Street, how at first the guys don't tell the girls that they're also having the nightmares and how bad the nightmares are.
Right.
He just kind of says, wow, yeah, I've been having some interesting dreams. And then you see, because Robert also paints, you see that the image that he's making is this like really bizarre, like grotesque image.
Devilish.
Like Freddy demon,
Yeah.
with like souls coming out at the bottom or something. Yeah. Kind of a bit of foreshadowing that it's not just Heather, but also Robert might not 100% be there to help her.
Yeah. You don't see that when you realize that it's Dylan, because everybody is starting to give Heather the whole, like, either A, you're raising him on horror movies, so clearly it's your fault, or 2, we start to find out that her family has mental health issues. So they're like, oh, you're just passing down your bit of family crazy to your kid.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to put any juice into the fact that the kid is hearing stuff too or seeing stuff too. But if somebody else outside of it starts to see shit or hear shit, then you're like, I'm justified now. Thank God. They need to just stop unplugging shit, because that doesn't work in these movies. Stop unplugging the TV. It doesn't work.
Unplugging phones doesn't work. Yeah.
Clearly not. And neither does unplugging televisions. So I do like how too that while she has a relationship with Robert Englund, she has her relationships with Wes and everything, that she really has that like almost like that father-daughter relationship with John Saxon too. So they meet at the playground and she's trying to tell, and I think he was the one that mentions like, well, doesn't your family have some like mental issue stuff? And are you afraid that
she tells him that it's in her family?
Afraid. Yeah. And he's like, all right, well, then you got to really you have to relax. That kid has to relax. We know you guys are going through some stuff because your hubby just died, but you guys got to just really get it together. And then the kid tries to off himself on a damn playground toy because he's like, I'm going to go find Daddy and join God. Like,
heaven wouldn't take me. Yeah. Oh, whoa. So kid's got his own problems here.
Yeah.
That's not a normal reaction. So
no.
So he's at the top of the jungle gym or whatever, and as he plummets down, Heather dives, grabs him.
Like beast mode dives. Yeah. Like, messes her leg up and
she limps for the rest of the movie. Yep.
Yeah, you're right. And then now this, apparently we find this out right after this. Wes is writing this script as it happens, because we read in his screenplay like Dylan's trying to reach God. That's what he said when he had, and I wrote his little accident, and I did that. Like, all goes back to Beetlejuice. I don't know if I skipped a part, but I just wrote, A, I fucking hate kids. B, the fucking tongue out of the phone receiver. Can you not? Because it bothered me a lot in the last one too. Dylan
gets he's sleepwalking again, and he has the finger knives.
Yeah, because then, oh yes, so she's getting all these weird cryptic notes in her mailbox, and she just keeps shoving them in a drawer, shoving them in a drawer, shoving them in a drawer. He, with the finger knives on and being all, oh, I'm Gage, takes them all out, lays them on the floor.
And it spells.
It spells, answer the phone. And then
Right.
phone
Phone rings.
rings.
So I think the knives were in her nightmare.
Yes.
But when she wakes up, she finds that he did lay out the letters.
Yeah.
Then the phone rings and it's just like, you know.
And then Dylan screams again. She does pick it up because the message said pick up the phone, but then the tongue attacks her. And then I also wrote, God, that kid who played Gage has to be so fucked up now as an adult. But that's a whole other story.
Yeah. I hope that these movies paid him well enough to pay for all that therapy.
I seriously hope so. He has a major apocalyptic physical reaction to the tongue out the phone receiver and everything. So he's shaking and freaking out. It looks very seizure-y. However, when she takes him to the hospital and they're saying like, does he have a history of seizures? I actually yelled, and you probably didn't hear me, but I was like, stop blaming epilepsy. Like, not everything is head trauma or, you know, I know they're trying to look for the scientific answer, but I get upset because epilepsy is one of those, like, first of all, like a hidden disease and nobody really understands its origin. So I kind of hate when they do that. But
yeah, I was kind of wondering your reaction on that one.
I get pissed off because people don't think it's, you know, it's just like, they just don't take shit seriously, and epilepsy especially since you mostly get that in kids, and kids can't talk about how they're feeling or talk about their symptoms. Right. Childhood epilepsy is constantly misdiagnosed as something else, like panic attacks or like ADD or like whatever. Yep. Narcolepsy. Like, I've heard all kinds of weird shit, and I'm not glad I have it, but I'm fucking glad I got it as an adult.
Right, because you can understand what's going on.
Tell the doctor what was going on.
Of course, the other thing after they rule out seizures is, has your child seen your movies?
Dude, and that is what I wrote on the next page. Oh, but yeah, look, I totally wrote, ooh, bitchy doctor blaming horror movies.
Yeah.
You want to, of course, it goes, I already had my rage.
It's like, and then the next, so it's like, you shouldn't be showing your child your movies. Well, I won't talk. But of course, now he has seen it, but she doesn't know how he's seen it, you know. So
like sit him down and like,
right. It's not like they're watching it on the weekends, you know.
Yeah.
But and then it goes to, or is there any mental health issues in your family, which we already know she's already got a fear of. So now you're just, is this helpful? Is this, now she just feels so blamed for everything ever.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I also, while that pisses me off too, 100%, because that's not, you can't always assume that mental illness or addiction or anything is going to be genetic. Because, you know, I do wonder if they put that Easter egg in there because Nancy's mom in the first one had addiction problems and probably mental health. Oh, and I knew he tongued his meds and that he didn't. Remember I said to you, I was like, I've seen Girl Interrupted, bro. I know you didn't swallow that.
Kid in a horror movie actually takes a sleeping pill.
Exactly.
Just don't waste them.
I also wrote that too. I was like, they're not going to work. Yeah. Like, cause your mother used to take, you know, extreme.
Well, that was the caffeine pills.
Work. So if you are her kid, these pills aren't going to work on you. Oh, here's where I get mad.
Uh-oh.
So when she's back to her meeting, now this is her actual big meeting with Wes Craven. I think the other times we've seen him, it's just been like, blip at the funeral, blip in the back of the scene. Like now this is the first time he's actually in a legit scene with her. And he starts explaining to her, which I love because I love origin stories, the origin of why he started to write this new script and why he wants her to be a part of it. But he starts to say that like the origin of these terrible nightmares and the demonic influences and stuff is like something that's like older than the universe and feeds on fear. And I was like, is that the origin to it? I was like, cause it is.
Yeah, but I was more wondering if you noticed behind him in that scene there were some Stephen King books.
No.
I think Cujo was the one I could make out, but I think it was like the Stephen King section of his bookcase.
Dude, so that's crazy.
For a film that's not touching on anything that happens in a sequel, This is the only time where it's like Freddy is part of this dream demon world of, especially in Freddy's Dead. There's this whole thing where as Freddy's dying, when he's being burned, the demons come to him and say,
the souls want him to be the vessel. Yeah.
Right. So that the demons want to inhabit the body of Freddy because they like the idea of Freddy.
Yeah.
It's that they do talk about that in Freddy's Dead. And I guess Freddy's Dead is maybe the only one that they really reference because there's constantly the question of, oh, but I thought they killed Freddy off. Oh yeah, isn't Freddy dead? They keep saying that because that movie did come out like the year before. And that movie's a little bit more comedic than all the others in the series.
Oh, really?
So it's kind of like this. It's very goofy at times, but at the same time, it has some really great like major origin story stuff of Freddy. So it's kind of weird. It's in the middle. But that they start that there. These demons have been inhabiting Freddy, and Wes here says they liked his body and they wanted to stay here.
Yes, that's what I was going to say too. That's what I wrote next, because I was like, so that means if he's saying that this thing has been since older than the universe, older than time, and it's come through with different iterations and different forms, and sometimes it sleeps and then sometimes it gets up and feeds, and I'm like, oh, that sounds freaking familiar. But he's finally on the one that fits these demons, it fits these souls, like you said. And I'm like, well, that's goes back to Pennywise too, because Pennywise wasn't just Pennywise for the 1950s and the 1980s. Like it was leading up for about 300 years, if you remember the origins of that, but before that, he could have been like, a flower. Like there's been a lot of different things. And then they finally find one that fits and they're like, oh, cool. Now we're going to use you. So that's why I kind of thought that. Not saying anybody's ripping off anybody. Okay.
Well, and there are some things that are like kind of constants. Yeah. Like there's certain themes. Yeah. There's certain themes that a lot of people like to go back to. So being Wes, he's got this very kind of metaphysical kind of Eastern religion kind of way to him. And he's a little bit kind of, a little hippie-ish almost. You realize that he's not the type of hack and slash director. He's not the guy who wanted to be part of all that.
Yeah.
He wanted to make, like I said last time, cerebral horror. He wanted to be the one who like made things about dreams and thoughts and, crazy things like that. They linger for a moment on the cast photo from part 1 of them all huddled around him and Freddy, him and Robert Englund in the Freddy outfit. And it's like the kids being kids on set. So it's just like, it does still have some sentimental value to him.
That's cool.
So I like that. It's a nice touch of him being like, well, I didn't really want to be involved, but now I will, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
and I appreciate his intellect 100%. I'm not snarking on it. I just when it happened, I kind of went like, I've heard that a lot. Hold on.
I did not think about that until you said it.
Because it's me.
Yes, I know.
But I definitely appreciate his like academic nature when it comes to writing these films. And like I said, that goes back to too, even if he personally follows more of an Eastern belief and leads his life that kind of way, he still realizes that like historical religions can play a factor into this, and that like the fear can come from, Old Testament Judaism, or you get Catholicism or Islam, like all that shit can tie in. So I like that, and I know we're getting to that too. But
and he does say here that he explains to her he has a nightmare and then he writes. So he's writing his dreams as they happen. Yeah. And so that's why I think she asks him even, did you know that would happen to Chase? Yeah. And he's like, but it was a nightmare. I didn't know that it would really happen. It was just a nightmare.
I mean, that's what, and I know why she flips out on him, because you can tell she's getting angry about that. She flips out on him because she probably still feels guilty because she had a dream about him that she didn't think he was dead until the cop showed up at her house, like you said. So she's still feeling her guilt, and then she's like, oh crap, the same thing just happened to him. But she's so like, I need another person to believe me. I need another person who's going through this and who's not just my crazy kid. And
that's
now
like
she found that.
The cycle of those conversations, talking with John Saxon, talking with Robert Englund, now talking to Wes Craven, she's starting to sound more and more like Nancy.
Oh my God, I didn't think of that.
It's like, but did you have nightmares? So she even says it to Bob Shea. Does that mean Wes is having nightmares again? there's a line where Bob Shane says, yeah, he's writing a screenplay. He wants to know if you'd be ready to play yourself or Nancy again. And well, how come he hadn't written one before? Well, he hadn't had any really bad dreams until now. So then it becomes, that means he's having nightmares. So then that starts the cycle of her becoming Nancy to me.
I didn't even like put that. I know you would because
I've watched this so many times though.
But you really, you don't just love her. You like relate. It's like how I feel about Bill Denbrough. Like, it's not just I like appreciate him as a character. I kind of relate to that. And I feel like you're like that with her.
Yeah.
You said that in the last episode, she studies this, like this path and, so yeah. And in reality too, she just talked to all the like important men in Nancy's life.
Yeah.
His father, she talked to her, the creator, like that whole.
Is that her god? Whoa.
No, dude, seriously, this shit. Listen, I tell you all the time, I can go on forever about.
Well, then it's like she talks to not just her father, but her god and her
devil. Father, creator, God. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but her god and her devil too, because Robert Englund's.
Dude, come on! I did really like when Wes said to her, I'm kind of catching you at your most vulnerable, but you gave Nancy your strength, and that's kind of why, like, if you don't come back and do this, like, I don't know if he was afraid, like, not that just the movie's not going to get made, but that like, he's going to die. Like, she is the one that has to save him, her kid, John Saxon, anybody else involved. Like, it's all on her.
And it's almost like, and this is pretty much like the end of the first movie, is like, if Freddy figures how to get out, if these demons figure a way to get into to our reality, then there's no one that can fight them. If they are embodying Freddy, then to them, Nancy is their foe. Nancy's their adversary.
Yeah.
So you have to embody that again, or who knows what they'll do to reality. So no pressure.
No, of course not. And that's why she even looked too like, cool, it's on me again. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Like, and it's almost like she remembers too, which is weird because like she wasn't really Nancy, but she's really Nancy.
Yep.
And this was just like a huge pile of Easter eggs. Her and her coffee, her alarm clock, her studies, like you said, she's trying to put all the pieces together in her head. And didn't she was reading either a newspaper or a book?
Some psychology journals and stuff.
Yes, yeah. That's what it was. Yeah. So she was studying like, sleep deprivation in kids, and what was it?
She looks up the diagnosis that the doctor gives Dylan.
Yeah.
So she's trying to learn more about childhood psychosis.
And then those two dudes died.
Just to like make sure you were paying attention and remembered the beginning.
Which I did.
Those guys never showed their work. Oh shit.
Yeah, because it killed them.
Yep.
And that's sad. And then we have another coffee pot, or another earthquake, which fucks up her coffee pot, which made me laugh.
Is that the earthquake where that's when she finally confronts Freddy?
No, this is the one before she goes back to the hospital and finds out that Dylan's on oxygen.
You also have to wonder about a mom who's not present when her son is going through a battery of tests. That's like one thing where I was kind of like, Wes, that wouldn't happen. But that gives her the opportunity to talk to Wes Craven, to do all the research and to, better prepare herself, because it takes Dylan out of the equation long enough for her to do all that stuff she has to do.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't happen. Mom wouldn't leave the hospital if the kid's getting all those tests. But so when she comes back and she's freaked out, and because there was another quake, and the babysitter's there.
Yes.
And
I think he's having another fit. I think the kid's having another fit.
They won't let either of them in because he's in intensive care.
Yes.
It's just where she like pushes past everyone to get to him anyway.
Yeah, and her arm is cut.
Right. So that was the dream where she did kind of confront Freddy for the first time for real in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
Because he cuts her.
On her arm.
Yeah.
Dude. Just got that. But yeah, so because when she goes to the hospital, her arm is bleeding, and the Dr. Dick is like, wait, something wrong with you. And she's just like, no, there's something wrong with my kid, because I could tell.
Yeah. But she runs down the hall where they won't let her go, pushes a cop out of the way to get to the room that Dylan's in, and says, screw your pass. when they
Yes.
ask her. Yes.
Which was awesome. Back to the girl with the pigtails.
Mm-hmm.
And her little white hair is coming back.
Mm-hmm.
For like a minute, I actually wrote, I'm like, is Julie okay? Or is she evil? Because I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure for like a second.
She was trying to get that close to Dylan too.
Yes. Yeah. So I had like a little doubtlet. I got very Hand That Rocks Cradle. I was like, oh, is this bitch trying to like take the child or something? But like,
Gotcha.
But then she's fine. I realized she's fine, of course. And then, bad things happen to her too. Every time Nancy / Heather tells a guy to not fall asleep, he fucking falls asleep.
Yes, they're awful at this.
7. It doesn't matter. She tells a man to not fall asleep because she needs him, and he goddamn falls asleep.
I won't blame Dylan because those 2 nurses are assholes, by the way.
Yes, they like double teamed on him and shot him with some meds, and then he started to get sleepy.
And that's like, oh man.
I know.
And that's when you realize that Julie, the babysitter, is actually on board with Heather, because she's like, no, mom said his mother specifically said no.
Yeah.
And that's when they do the sideswipe on her. And then that's messed up.
Yeah. And then when little baby Dylan falls asleep, Tina dies, which sucks because like, okay, not that I wanted Dylan to die, but
right. So Julie dies Tina style.
Tina spinning room style.
Yes.
Which was cool, not gonna lie, even though I was sad that Julie died.
But it was cool this way because unlike the first movie where we don't see what's actually happening to her, we see Freddy the whole time.
Oh yeah, you're right. Because Dylan's asleep. Mm-hmm. So Dylan sees him and we see him, but she's like, what the fuck is happening to me? Like, sucks to be her that day.
Yeah, just for being nice. That sucks.
Yeah.
So Dylan's asleep, but Freddy's out and chaos is happening, and the doctor pulls her aside, like has the 2 security guards muscle her aside.
Dude, right?
And then they realize when they go back in the room, because there's Julie dead on the floor, Dylan's missing.
Yes.
And then the doctor's like, well, he has to be here, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, no, you idiot. He's a sleepwalker.
Yeah.
Like, listen to me. I know.
Yeah.
Get out of my way. So then she figures out, well, we were just talking about how I'm just across the highway at home. Mm-hmm. So he's going to try and find the way home. Yeah. And that's probably the most CG in the whole movie, but there's no other way you can shoot that. So it's totally acceptable. And it looks pretty good. And the
million Freddys that are behind the thing of the, like, I looked up for a second because yes, I was frantically writing, and then I looked up and I'm like, wait, why are there a million of y'all? And y'all look fake, because I mean, not really fake, like.
Well, he's being chased by Freddy across the highway, so that's what he sees, but nobody else sees. And then it's like it's all these different versions of Freddy, and then all of a sudden it's just like a wall of Freddys.
Yes.
And then like the huge Freddy picks him up with like a claw, and you're like, whoa! And Heather has to jump into traffic and gets smashed.
That whole fucking scene gave me like PTSD, dude. It gave me PTSD, and I was also like, Gage should not be near a highway again. What is happening? This poor child.
This poor kid. How many times are you going to put him in that situation?
Run over by a truck again.
But she calls John Saxon when she's trying to find him. And he's like, what do you mean? What? Wait, what?
And this is where I wrote, okay, now I'm confused.
Okay, so it gets back to it. That's why I say she's slowly becoming Nancy. John Saxon is at her house by the time she gets there. And somewhere between the kitchen and the front door, he stops being John Saxon and starts being Officer Thompson. And it's just like, what? He starts calling her Nancy. And by the end of that scene, and you see her have to give into it and not want to. And she's like,
fuck.
Love you too, Daddy. Like she has to finish the line.
Yeah.
And boom, she's in the PJs.
Yep. You look down, you see his badge, which I liked that, like, I pointing towards the badge. And then, you turn around and she's in like her little 16-year-old pajamas. I'm just like, oh, fuck. Now we just got trippy.
Yep. But Dylan leaves the breadcrumb trail for her.
Yes. So then before that I wrote, so now they have to like make the movie. Like that's how they have to finish this, is they're making, and then all of my confusion from the entire movie was finally fixed. So the house that we've known as Heather's house, that's the house
Because it's like the whole time it's this very modern LA house.
Yeah.
But when she turns around, then it's
the
Nancy's
outside
house.
and you're like, that's her house. That's where she lived with her mom.
Totally.
Like the front door and the way the porch was. And I was like, holy shit, that's her house. Remember, I just
right. And then after I watched that with you, I watched all the other sequels, and there's a point in after part 2 where that becomes not as Nancy's house anymore, but Freddy's house. So that house is in every movie.
Oh, I love that. See,
yeah.
That's just good shit. That's just good.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a bad series of films. There's highs and lows, but there's good stuff in all of it.
Yeah.
So.
And then I got super excited because I wrote all in big letters. I was like, breadcrumbs equal Dylan sleeping pills equals Hansel and Gretel. And I was like, God, I love good scripts.
Yes. So good. And it's like that. All you need is that little setup in the beginning. Yeah. And he knows it and he does it. And then she figures out not only is this the breadcrumbs, but this is the way for me to follow you into your dreams.
Yes. She actually does get, when she falls down this kind of like well into hell, and it's very like ornate, and I kind of caught like the 7 deadly sins, so I was like, oh, this is cool. It's like Dante's Inferno kind of shit, like very ornate and rad. You see the script and she kind of pulls it out and you literally see where they're right up to at that point, and I'm like, oh shit, it's literally being written as they're going.
Yeah. So
because it says like, you know, Heather as Nancy is reading the script or something and she just fell into a bunch of water, and it's like, oh crap, that literally just happened. So I like that. I wrote, why snakes? God damn it, I hate snakes.
Yeah, very much like this kind of Dante's version of Hades, and yeah, there's snakes always in those kind of
right.
versions.
I know.
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't need them. Just the movements and whatever, and I don't know if they did this on purpose or if this was just like an extra little fun thing that maybe, you know, people were going to try and pick up, but because, you know, Heather is older and they're trying to recreate this thing from 10 years prior, it almost looked like the body of Freddy, not the actor inside, but like literally the entity Freddy was getting a little older because he wasn't able to keep up like when he was a young demon, you know, like he did seem a little like slacking, and I was like, I don't know if y'all did that on purpose or it was just an accident, but good on you because I like it.
I also wondered if it was like he's fighting the demons to become something, like to move on to the next level or something like that. So it's, yeah.
Oh, maybe I didn't even.
Because I don't know. I was trying to figure that out too. Like it's definitely changed. Like he's physically different. We noticed that from the first time he comes up out of the sheets at her earlier in that earthquake dream.
Yes.
His face is not the Freddy Krueger face of the movies.
Yeah.
You know,
like I'm looking at the packaging of the figure behind you. Like it just looks like that's his original. It looks like a burn scar, which he was, that's how they killed him, right? And his nose is a little hooked. Like, okay, but this was like
this is like skeletal.
Yeah, yes, exactly. That is like right out of like a Lovecraft novel. That's what I appreciate about it too. But then, of course, you know, with the new comes the old. He's got his creepy long arms.
I know. I was thinking that the two things that were our only objections, I think.
Oh, yeah. I didn't say the other one.
Yeah. Both of them happen in this scene. The two things that we said weren't successful in the entirety of a great movie of the first come back to haunt us in this one.
Yeah, literally. Like, I
have the stretchy arm.
So creepy when he's trying to go through that door and get to Dylan, who kind of like went into this fire pit just to get away from.
It's like a furnace, yeah.
Yes, it was like a kiln. And I'm like, wow, you braved fucking fire to get away from, you know, and Freddy's reaching and reaching, but then all of a sudden his arm starts to grow. And I'm like, come on, you piece of shit. And then, obviously, Nancy is trying to run to the kiln to save Dylan, and she's climbing a flight of stairs, and they turn into marshmallow quicksand.
I said the return of the marshmallows in my notes.
Yeah.
Marshmallow steps.
Yep, marshmallow steps and long fucking arms.
It does go back to that whole Hansel and Gretel thing, because he climbs into an oven.
Yes.
Yeah.
You push him in there and the witch is dead. But before he does that, Melissa didn't like this next part. When his mouth got huge.
Yeah, like, that was
bigger than like the Adam and Barbara and Beetlejuice when they like alter their face. Massive and creepy and coming at you because he's trying to eat Dylan, and now like
extra jaws or something in there. Yeah,
that was insane and definitely did what it was supposed to do. But then when his like tongue got really long and he was basically, I don't know if he was trying to eat Nancy or fuck her or strangle her all at the same time.
Definitely. I mean, it was one thing when it was around her neck, But then
But
you
it
see it
went,
kind of slip into her
"Ah!"
clothes, and I'm like, that's violating.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, all right, I know we talked about that too with the first movie, how like it's taking away their innocence. But I was like, you literally, that's wrong. That's
And now she's a 30-year-old, 40-year-old woman. So no.
but now it's sexual assault.
Yes,
And
exactly.
I'm like, oh, it was so, it kept going and going. Then, Dylan got all, what's
He
the,
got stabby.
he got stabby. Oh, that's tough.
There was one line I wanted to say, and there was no movie. It's just her life. And I was like, ooh, that's good.
That
So
is
she's
good.
reading it in the screenplay. So that's
Well, so then where did the screen, so that goes back to, is Wes her creator? Like, is Wes her god? Like, he literally is writing every aspect of her life, but the only time she realizes it is when it's scary and when Freddy's involved?
kind of like a messed up version of Stranger Than Fiction. So she's literally, there's a woman writing a story somewhere, and there's a man someplace that is his life that she's writing as she writes it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like if you have that like internal narrator in your head,
Yeah.
well, his narrator is actually selling the book
Holy
afterwards.
crap. Yes, exactly though.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But this was like the horror movie version of that. So that's what I mean. I just like that. That's a great line because it sums up this whole film. Like it's
Right.
like, is it a movie? Is it her life? Because we still don't know.
Is it a
it's hard to
dream?
tell.
Where does it merge? Like, where does your conscious meet your unconscious and blah, blah, blah.
Yup.
Dude, I love
Good
it.
stuff.
I was really mad about the tongue. I was like, you had the call back with the phone receiver. Fine. You did it. Do you need the last one? That was unnecessary, and I'm disgusted now.
Okay, if we want to get into it, if we want to say that that was a violation of her with the tongue wrapped around her, at the same time, when she grabs that like snake or eel or whatever the hell it is,
And
that
shoves it in his eye.
is that her violating him back? That's penetration.
And it's all very like devil tools, like the devil's tongue, and the snaky.
Oh, and then after that, when Dylan starts stabbing at the tongue and eventually they stab the tongue, it splits the end of the tongue and he has a forked tongue.
I didn't even see that part. Come on, man. My nuns from Catholic school would be so proud of me.
I just went to catechism, guys. I didn't get the full regalia.
Good for you.
So then that's when they push him in to the oven.
Push him into the oven, yep, and Hansel and Gretel's over. I feel like that's the end because they wake up and they fall out of the bottom of the bed.
Yep.
And they're back into their like real life. But what came with them, because we learned that Heather/Nancy has powers to take things out of dreams.
Yep.
Is the script, and it's signed by Wes Craven. Mm-hmm. And I think his speaking over it was just such a nice touch. It's not just an ode to the fans of this movie. At this point, we've crossed over that. This is an ode to like anyone that's ever wanted to make a film. Mm-hmm. Like anybody that's ever wanted to be involved in the creation of like a universe. This was just like his ode to them. And I was just like, oh my God, like having so many friends who are filmmakers, I'm just like, this means so much to me watching this for you all and like, well, with one of you, but like, this is why y'all do this shit,
She reads the first page of the screenplay, which is her dream that the movie starts. So when she starts reading to Dylan, it's page 1.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and it's literally, what is it? It's a story.
Mm-hmm.
You read it to me, yes, and they're saying it as you see it on the screenplay that she's holding in her hands, and then it goes into finally the title scene and the opening credits.
Seriously, that was incredible to me. Yeah, I actually, I had gone through such a roller coaster at that point. I forgot that there were no credits. So then when the end came, I was like, here they are.
Yes.
Like, okay.
She reads you into the credits, which I love. In my notes, I have, what an awful remix of the score at the end. It's so 90s it hurts.
Oh, dude.
Oh my God, that was so bad. That was like 90s TV bad.
That was
not even 90s movie bad. Oof.
Yeah, no, that was tough. And my last note was, this one is so much better than whichever Scream tried to do this with Stab. Not, like I said, it wasn't just the little nods to the fans or, that time period or whatever you want to call it, but it really like nods to people that, like I said, want to be in this business, or like little kids who, play with their video cameras back in the day, or, play on their typewriter because they want to write a script or whatever. Like,
all about the art of creating is that it can't not be part of you. You're part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But
for all those little kids that want to be like actors and directors and writers and shit, or like special effects people, like they get to see all the magic behind it, and that's really like exciting and fun.
I had a couple of things just a few things I wrote down that I wanted to share.
Yay.
One thing I realized in this viewing that I hadn't really thought about before is that you watch not just the transgression of Heather becoming Nancy, but you watch how physically battered she becomes in this film. So like at first she gets that crack on the head at the funeral.
Yes.
She has a bandage on the entire rest of the film.
She has a scar for the rest of the film too, yeah.
Yeah. When she so then the bandage finally falls off. It's a scar. When she catches Dylan, she lands on her hip and she limps for the rest of the film.
Mm-hmm.
When she runs into the highway to try and save Dylan, she gets hit by a car. She's got scratches on her after that. The scratch from the first incident with Freddie. She's just kind of like gains all of these scars throughout this journey, and it's like you see it physically taking its toll. Which I thought that was just amazing to see. And none of it kind of is movie magic that goes away or anything like that. It just accumulates.
Yeah. But that talks to, look, this actor, this woman is getting older and she's taken this through the whole time. She's not a young, fresh kid anymore. And like we've talked about before, like where do older, not that even she was that old, but like where do older actresses make their role anymore? Like, you know, they could have kept, like you said, movie magic, they could have kept her pretty throughout the whole thing. But they didn't, because you're supposed to see her wear and tear.
And it's that wear and tear. And that's blend of reality and fiction, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't get better in real life that fast.
Exactly. Especially getting hit by a car.
A really quick thing I just want to point out one of the first times that we were at the hospital and the nurse goes to ask the doctor, well, I think she's going to give him a shot as the first sedative that Dylan gets before he goes for his tests. The nurse asks, what's the diagnosis, doctor? That nurse is Lynn Shay, sister of Bob Shay, who was the teacher in the first movie.
I thought you said that, but kind of low because you didn't want me to, you know, they wanted me to hear stuff. But I was like, did she just say that? Yes. Cool.
So I thought that was cool. Oh, right. And then the gray streak comes back in her hair after everything starts to go to shit.
I love it.
Yeah. She goes through a lot.
Yeah, that all ties back to she's not 17 anymore. And now when we watch the first one and she's just like, oh my God, I look like I'm 20. And we made such funny comments. Oh, bitch, you think 20 is bad? Wait till 40.
Yeah, wait till 40, dude.
Now she's hitting that. She's probably 35 or whatever on the crux of 40. And like you said, actually feeling it. And that shit does not repair as easily when you're 17.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that they kept that throughout the whole thing. And
arthritis sucks, Nancy. Get ready.
Dude, yeah. God, I can't. Yeah. Your fingers are not going to stay thin and pretty the whole time, and everything's going to wrinkle, and that gray is going to stay put. It's not just going to go away when you wake up from your nightmare.
Yeah.
You know?
Any wrap up moments that anything else you want to pontificate?
I don't know. There were so many cool things. That like I don't include in my notes, but when I talk to you, they come to the forefront, which I love. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think we covered all of them.
I'm just going to do my quick little rundown of why this is an important movie. And I think they're all things that we've already said, so we can just bang them off really quick. Postmodern film. It's the film within a film within a film. It's the reality in a film, so it's a rarity. I don't think I can think of many other films where the actors are playing themselves in a fictional story.
Yeah.
So amazing. All of that means the writing is awesome. God, I mean, as much as I love the writing of the original, this is to me like Wes Craven at his peak, like man. And then of course it leads to Scream, so it's like this is his thing and he does it amazing. So
yeah.
Directing, obviously, because of all of that, it's all good Wes stuff. The return, if not the finale of the Heather Langenkamp cycle. I love that. She's just awesome. I love the ability to drag in not just Robert, but also John Saxon and a few other familiar faces.
Yeah.
Love seeing Bob Shay as part of the story. I thought that was really cool.
Cool.
So all of that, I would say that kind of all wraps together in this kind of multi-layered onion-like writing of this film.
Mm-hmm.
Really the writing is the main key. It's amazing storytelling. It's innovative. It's style changing. It's just like the first movie. There was nothing like it before. So
yeah. I can't even picture, like I was thinking about that so much, and it's super confusing to try to keep all of those moving pieces like straight and comprehensible. Like you said, every moment where we were watching and we were like, oh shit, another light bulb went off. Oh my God, another light bulb went off. Like they do that on purpose.
Yeah.
And so to me, just when I get a great idea and I start to, run with it, I go full bore for a while. And then I'm like, wait, I feel like I'm going to lose people. Because when I read it, I forget where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
So to keep all that, like, on the level and give yourself this was the perfect plot arc. Like, exposition was perfect. You didn't need a lot of it because you already had 5 previous iterations.
Yep.
Conflict perfect. Denouement everything was just like exactly the way a story was supposed to be written.
And I have to say, I love a horror film with a conclusion.
Yes.
So many horror films end on the climax.
Yeah.
And there's nothing after it. It's just like, and roll credits, or it's either here's the climax and here's the fake you out ending, right?
Yeah.
But this has an actual resolution, and I love that, and it's rare, and it's done well.
Because almost, I feel like after this, maybe I guess after this set of movies, and then maybe the Jason movies or whatever, like you said, they were just like, we're clearly banking on the fact that we're going to be making more.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to keep the audience wanting more. We got to keep them salivating. I know we keep going back to Scream, but Scream did that for almost all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the ending of the first Scream. I was like, oh, Shaggy, cool, that was fine. But like, that was a little bit of a shock, I suppose. But like, it just, like you said, it was all those fake outs and you weren't really sure. And then because it was preparing to lead you into a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Well, to note also, we should note that the Scream films were all written by Kevin Williamson. They weren't written by Wes Craven, but that was his dream person to direct the films.
Yeah.
So
he directed all of them, right? But he did.
He directed all of them. So I mean, yeah, that there's a difference in a writing style too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just want to show really quickly, if you're collecting the movie, as I've been doing the DVD series, I did have, this is New Nightmare. There's some extras on here, but I do believe all these extras make it to the Blu-ray. So if it's just that you're a DVD person versus a Blu-ray, this is the way to go. These new lines were great. The whole Redbox series of them. My Laserdisc, which is really towards the end of run of lasers, by the way. So I was really happy that this one did come out. It's widescreen. That's the specials. Back then, that was special. It was widescreen, and I think has a trailer. So, so just remember, guys, this is all because we've been watching this amazing box set that gets the entire story, and then there's that other stuff, which isn't the bad, but it's just other stuff. This is the story. Yeah. This is the arc. So
I like it.
We spent a month on it. That's how much I like it. If you want to prove how much I like something, I don't do it in one episode. I don't do it in 2 episodes. I did it in like 4.
Yeah.
So you know I like it.
Dude, we're the same. If any,
I was gonna say, what was it?
Yeah. Any viewers of the Horror Academic who also are listeners of Brook Reading know that when we like some shit, we like it for a real long time.
So as part of our All the Horror, this month we've been having other friends of the show give us their 2 cents on which Nightmare on Elm Street is their favorite. So as part of All the Horror, Caitlin Duffy, who is part of the Gods and Monsters pod, as well as the Night of the Living Academic pod, and she's another PhD student candidate. So she also writes for Something Ghoulish with me. This is what she had to say about her favorite Nightmare on Elm Street film, which just happens to be New Nightmare.
Hi, my name is Caitlin, and I'm one of the co-hosts of 2 podcasts, Night of the Living Academic Pod and Gods and Monsters, which is part of the Something Ghoulish family. I wanted to say a special thank you to Victoria, or the Horror Academic, for including me in this celebration of all things Freddy Krueger. So when Victoria asked me to talk about my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street film, it took me a little while to choose one. I was mainly debating between 2, one of which is 2003's Freddy vs. Jason, because I love all things campy and I'm a big Friday the 13th fan. And yeah, that's one of those movies that I always turn to for like a comfort watch, or also, you know, a fun movie to put on the background at a party, if we're ever allowed to have parties again. But the one I went with was Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is from 1994. I chose this one because I'm a really big fan of meta horror. I love Scream, and it's really exciting to see Wes Craven sort of toying with the meta horror formula and style before moving on to Scream in 1996. There's a lot of fun details that you can find in this movie, like the whole movie is full of these greens and reds that make up Freddy's sort of color palette. It's all over the place in this movie. Wes Craven pulled from some real life events, like Heather Langenkamp had a real life stalker, and Craven sort of weaved that into the story for this film. We don't have any opening titles or credit sequences. In this film, I think it's the first one of the Nightmare on Elm Street series to not have an opening credit sequence. And that was done to sort of blur the lines between, is this a film? Is this a documentary? Is this something else? And I think also this movie does a really good job of making Freddy seem incredibly powerful, because he's sort of pushing past even Robert Englund, and he's becoming his own sort of demonic entity, taking over the world as well as this film. And finally, it's really fun seeing Wes Craven in the movie itself and talking about Freddy and talking about the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, it's just a really fun fun movie, and I don't think it's talked about enough, especially when talking about meta horror films. So yeah, that's the one I choose, and thanks again for letting me do this.
Okay, it's been an entire month of one box set. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope if you haven't watched Nightmare on Elm Street by now that you have thought about it at least. God damn. Thank you again, Melissa. As always, I love when we get to talk movies. Thanks for watching this All the Horror month of Nightmare on Elm Street, and I'll see you next time.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.